Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be doing something slightly different. It's going to be a power rankings video, but rather than making new power rankings, since we just had a tournament that tells you who was the best and the worst, what I'm going to be doing is taking a look at my old power rankings that I made before groups and seeing how well they translated into the final result. And along the way we're going to be doing a lot of coping, and I'm going to try and justify all of the mistakes I made and explain why I was actually smart the entire time. So, without too much further ado, let's take a look at the spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet's pretty self-explanatory. Here on the left, we have my rankings that I made before groups. I obviously ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through to 16. And on the right, we have the official rankings, which is obviously where they finished in stage 2 of the main event. The slight difference is obviously in the main event, you can finish 5th/6th or 9th/12th or whatever, whereas I've done the full 1 to 16. So what I've done initially is I've highlighted in green the ones I've got correct. So as we can see, at the top, looking pretty good. At the bottom, oh, what a good job I've done at the bottom of EMEA. I've nailed these guys. If you want to tell me who the worst team in a group is, I can tell you who the worst team in a group is. So, obviously, slightly happy with that. The only other one I got in the middle was actually the D Impero one, who I had them as 8th, just squeaking into the top 8, and they finished 7th/8 alongside yeah. So, those are the ones I got correct. I think in many ways, maybe the SSG one was kind of obvious, even though the grand final wasn't actually that obvious result. It went all 7 maps. But I think most people had these as their top 2, so I maybe haven't, done anything miraculous with those top 2. Once we get to the rest of the rankings, obviously the situation with Twisted Minds, this 3rd place ranking I gave Twisted Minds was obviously based on them being at full strength, fielding their original roster, and this turned out not to be the case, which is why they've seen a big drop to 5th/6th, and as such, they've sort of bumped everyone else up for rankings. The other big surprise, I think, is obviously I had X Oblivion still as the 4th team. I thought they'd be closer to maybe Peps, and this would a Beaks team, which would become Peace and Love. I thought they'd be closer to those teams, rather than closer in this top 3, even though they finished 3rd in stage 1. What I didn't expect is they would fall all the way to 9th and 12th. I didn't see that at all. Honestly, I didn't think they'd do as well without Chase. I thought he's a big miss for them. But I didn't have that on my cards. I'll tell you that for free. So pretty fine to admit that I got that one wrong. Did not anticipate the X Oblivion fall off to be that big. Another big one I got wrong was Ataraxia. I thought Ataraxia wouldn't do that well. Even though on paper their roster seems quite good, I was never convinced by it, and I never thought they'd really be touching a Peps or an X Oblivion, I guess. And I thought they'd be below Peace and Love, and all the way, bottom of the top 8 type thing. What transpired though is they actually did even worse than that. Big Kalios came in, and it didn't help really. They went out in groups as well. A really disappointing result. I think, to be fair, if you actually watch the Peace and Love versus Ataraxia games, and this is where I'm going to cope a little bit of my original reasoning. If you watch those original Peace and Love and Ataraxia games, they're actually super close. So it probably means that even though they didn't get out of groups, they're still probably relatively in this power level. Obviously, we're going to see slightly different versions of these rosters going forward once we get to face it. But I think I anticipated the X Oblivion and Ataraxia drop-off. I just thought the drop-off would put them like here and here rather than here and here. So those are the big ones I got wrong, and as such, a load of teams got bumped up. Obviously, one of the big beneficiaries, as well as Super Shy. I think I always thought Super Shy would probably be one of the better teams outside the top 8. So seeing them do actually fairly reasonably well once they make top 8, I'm happy to see. I did think Peps would be sort of top of the rest, which I guess ultimately ended up being true. Obviously, they've been sort of propelled a little bit even further up the rankings since X Oblivion and Twisted Minds had their fall off. So I think I sort of had the right indication with some of these teams. That these teams would get worse, other teams would get better. So I feel like I was in the ballpark with a lot of those predictions, but the degrees I got way off. And obviously the X Oblivion one especially, I really didn't see anything like that happening. I think when you look at it as well, like even though X Oblivion, you go, they didn't get a group, so they're maybe even artificially lower than they would have, if they actually got to the top of 8, maybe they still would be around here. But actually, I look at that Super Shy team, and it was 2 fixtures, and that's the benefit for me. Now, X Oblivion roster had 2 fixtures against Super Shy. They barely won one and just about lost the other. So it actually is pretty consistent. It's only a 2-match sample, but 2 out of 2 actually makes me feel like maybe they are a bit closer to that level than you maybe would have maybe you would have hoped beforehand if you're an ex-Oblivion fan. So overall, am I happy with my predictions? Yeah, I think I got some of the trajectories right for most teams. I think I did anticipate some of it, though I definitely these fall-offs and these degree of falls-off. And obviously the Twisted Mind thing, I didn't predict at all, but obviously, who could have, right? Who could have predicted this? So I don't feel too bad about getting that one wrong. So overall, how do I feel about my EMEA rankings? Okay. You can tell me in the comments if I'm just coping, but I feel like I had a lot of the right trajectories in mind. And then on the flip side of EMEA, we had North America. And we've done a very much a similar thing. So we have my original rankings pre-groups, and we have the official rankings where they finally finished at the end of the main event. And again, we've highlighted in green the ones that I've got right. So as we can see, I successfully predicted Toronto to win the whole thing, which probably puts me in at least the top 2% of people for intelligence. And I got a lot of the ones at the bottom right. Again, O3 Splash obviously became Unking. A lot of the others, again, obviously I've done a specific ordering as opposed to just how they actually finished, whether they finished any sort of blocks of 4 teams. So there's maybe still an argument now you could change these teams a little bit. The only one I didn't get right was obviously I had Who Are Goldfish 15th. But actually, they were in 7th/8. And then as such, the team that sort of almost directly swapped with them is I had overrated Shikigami, who actually ended up finishing bottom of their group. Pretty disappointingly, especially after their stage 1 getting into the top 8. So, alright, not too bad when we look at those bottom ones, got one team wrong. And some of that I really do feel is down to the groups as well. The fact that Who Is Goldfish had the Toronto group, where they were with much more beatable teams than some of the other groups, I think really lends itself to that. Then, if we look at the other ones, this is where it may be, Shadow and I got Chungus in the 5th/6th spot. Cool. But one of the big predictions I had, and this is where I'm going to have to do some serious coping to justify it here. But I had Students of the Game in 8th, and I actually thought Students of the Game were going to fall off. I thought when I'd watched some of their Swiss matches, it seemed a little bit tense in comms. It felt like they were getting worse rather than getting better. So I sort of extrapolated that thought into, they'll still make top 8 because they have the player quality too, but they won't be able to actually deliver on this. Whereas obviously, for all of those who watched the main event, they kind of delivered. They got top 3 and they got a spot in Dallas. So I think the things I got wrong about Students of the Game, I think I wasn't wrong that they were struggling. I think when I spoke to Cal a little bit on my stream, the link will be in a corner somewhere. But when I spoke to Cal a little bit on the stream, and I spoke to Infected as well, they talked about the idea that they were having issues, especially in terms of communication, who's talking, the ideas they're going with, and that they actually had to do a lot of stripping back of taking some of the cooks out of the kitchen and having a more focused calling structure. Likewise, Wheats also came in and very much acted as a mediator, which I think is exactly what that group needed. So while I think I was right that Students of the Game was struggling, what I got completely wrong is I saw that and I was like, these guys are dead. These guys are dead in the water and they're going to sort of flounder to a top 8 finish. Whereas actually, they fixed loads of these issues, they improved a whole bunch, and they started to really look like one of the top teams. If you watch any of my interviews from before the main event, loads of the American teams and American players were talking about, or actually Students of the Game doing better than people expect. They might surprise a few people. So that's for Students of the Game. On that one, I have to send the apology cards for that one, because I got that one wrong, and Students of the Game, very happy to see them at that main event in Dallas. Other than that, the other big one I got wrong is I underestimated Citrus Nation as well. I thought they would again... to be fair, I didn't actually think they would get out of groups. We'll get to that in a second, but I didn't even think they'd get out of groups, even though I thought they were probably actually one of the better teams because they had that difficult group with Luminosity and Timeless in it. So, I underestimated them, and then I thought, one, they probably wouldn't even get out of groups, and if they got out of groups, I didn't really see them either getting past FMCL, getting past Luminosity, any of the teams like this, but it's fair to say they did really well, and they maybe even could have gone a little bit further if it wasn't for the issue with Lethal not being available for their final game. So, Citrus Nation, Students of the Game, I think I got those ones wrong, and while there is an element of I can cope a little bit with some of the EMEA ones that I sort of got the trajectory right, on these ones, I got the trajectory wrong. I thought they'd be going down or wouldn't be that close, whereas actually they became sort of top contenders and really scary fixtures in some of those lower bracket matches. Other than that, other ones I got wrong, I maybe had Pirates of the Pajamas a little bit higher than they actually finished. Not too far off, obviously. The big one, I obviously, the biggest disparity here is maybe obviously I had Timeless getting back-to-back seconds as opposed to second into 9th to 12th. And I think I'm probably not the only person in that boat who did not see that coming. so maybe can't feel too bad about missing that prediction. I actually thought Timeless were going to get better and better and better. After I'd recorded the rankings already, in that final week leading up to the main event, I had heard their scrims had been particularly bad. So by the time it did end up being bad, or I should say in groups, sorry, the week leading up to the second week of groups, I heard their scrims had been particularly bad. So I thought they'd struggle a bit more than we'd seen them. But I didn't think they'd actually lose. And I think it's a little bit of both. Timeless having a bad time of it in their scrims, and Citrus Nation very much on the up, and Orisa Sojan really perfect for, I think, what are their two best players in Zeb and Lethal. One of the other ones I really don't think I got right at all was I thought M80 would still be here. I knew their Koreans were going to be off ping when I recorded those original rankings. I thought a lot of their problems weren't necessarily ping related. And this is maybe something you've heard. The problems aren't ping related. Pelican and Happy are still playing well. It's not gonna make a huge boost to their ability. But obviously the Scrimbucks, the fact that they even beat Toronto in an upper bracket final, M80 are well and truly on the up. And especially when you consider length of time together, M80 versus Toronto, start to worry a little bit if I'm Toronto on that one. I think one thing I underestimated, and this is maybe something that UV made a particularly big point of when I spoke to him in my interview, was it's not just the fact that Pelican and Happy are going to be on lower ping. They're still able to play pretty well on ping, maybe better than a lot of their counterparts, especially Pelican, right? But one thing you get once you get everyone to a facility, you get a huge natural boost in terms of everyone playing together, everyone coming together. One, your Koreans don't have to wake up at like 5, 6 a.m. or whatever it was. So you don't just get the in-game boost in terms of slightly better ping, slightly better performance, you hit a few more shots, dodge a few more things, hit a few more cooldowns, blah, 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 blah. You actually get a huge sort of morale boost or an intangible boost to your confidence, your ability to solve problems, your ability to be together, get on with each other. And I think that's obviously in a non-Overwatch League world, that's what a lot of teams are missing, with the exception, obviously, of Toronto, and I guess actually Luminosity, because they're all in collegiate together. So actually, I think this boost to M80 has set them on a really big upward trajectory now. So I think M80, again, that one I got completely wrong. I thought they would maybe look 5-10% better or something like this. Like they'd look better, but it would be a marginal improvement. Whereas I think what we actually got to see a little bit of in those final two games was the cusp of more significant improvements. So I think M80 I got really wrong. Timeless got really wrong. Citrus Nation got really wrong. Maybe I'm just a fraud when it comes to North America. The only other one to talk about maybe is I had Luminosity in 4th, and they actually finished 5th and 6th. I think Luminosity were a team that had their stocks quite high at one point, doing very well in scrims, and people were thinking, especially once Timeless didn't get out of groups, and it was Luminosity's to take that spot in Dallas. And I think that was true, honestly. And they never quite lived up to it. I think maybe I anticipated that a little bit more. I thought even though they were playing well, I thought they'd still find themselves ultimately below this sort of, well, what I thought at the time was the big three. So I thought they wouldn't make it there. They maybe underperformed actually even more in reality, which is pretty disappointing for them, especially since the door had been opened so much for them by Timeless's. I didn't do it on purpose, I promise, opener. The door had been opened. The door had been opened quite significantly by Timeless failing to get out of groups, and they were actually in the most favourable spot to qualify for Dallas through the circuit points. So it didn't translate at all. I know Luminosity, they have all the sort of, it was a busy week. They had to travel from this collegiate land and all of these things. But to be fair, a lot of teams in America also were suffering and dealing with that situation as well. So I think still ultimately very disappointing for Luminosity. And it'll be interesting now to see, can Luminosity sort of ping pong back up post Dallas? Obviously, they're going to have a relatively big period of downtime over that, as many of the teams will be. So over on North America, I think there's a much bigger argument that I got way more wrong than I did in EMEA. In EMEA, I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments if I'm coping or not. I actually thought a lot of the EMEA ones were quite reasonable. And even though I didn't always get the scope of the trajectory right, oh, wrong one. The scope of the trajectory right, I at least got the general gist of it quite right. Whereas a lot of these ones, I actually sort of just started to write off something like Students of the Game when I really shouldn't have. I started to sort of think M80 would languish in third, which maybe oh, that's a bad arrow. Which maybe I shouldn't have, and all of this. And so, while I still predicted Toronto, anyone with half an eyeball could predict Toronto were probably going to win that one. So a lot of things I got wrong. Let me know what you thought of this video. I think it's nice sometimes to reflect back. It's easy to make power rankings at the time and then just set them off, cast them aside, and then never have to answer for your bold predictions or any of your hot takes. So I thought it would be an interesting concept to look back and see if I was close or not. Turns out not so close in some of them. Maybe I am a bit of a fraud when it comes to North America, so maybe I need to pay more attention. Let me know what you think. Let me know which teams surprised you, if you had power rankings beforehand, or which teams have moved up and down in your mind. And then let me know if you enjoy this video, and we can do it again next time around. Thank you very much, everyone.